Hi everyone, my name is Madeeha, and today I'll be presenting on The Last Princess, which is a 2016 historical film that dramatizes the life of Princess Ryoke, who was the final royal heir of the Joseon dynasty. The film really does focus on emotional storytelling and blending it with key historical events to show how colonization shaped one woman's life, but also symbolically the nation's identity as a whole. So, to begin, I'll give a brief overview of what we're going to be discussing. I'll be beginning with film information, then moving into the synopsis of the story, and then I'll get into some of the key historical background that's needed to understand the period, and then I will focus on the main takeaways of the film about the themes the film raises itself. So, moving forward to first discuss the director himself. So, the film was directed by Jin Ho, who studied philosophy at Yonsei and then went on to obtain a filmmaking degree at the Korean Academy of Film Arts. He co wrote A Single Spark and Kilimanjaro and also was the writer behind One Fine Spring Day, Happiness, and April Snow, all of which really focus on his approach in very character driven narratives and also quite gentle approaches that help to shape this particular film into a human tragedy rather than just a political loss. So he's also an award winning director. He won Best Director for One Fine Spring Day at the Baeksang Arts Awards in 2002 and also obtained a Best Screenplay Award for Happiness at the Korean Association of Film Critic Awards in 2007. So, moving forward to discuss some of the cast members. These are just a few of the main cast members, but these are the ones that I thought were the most important to talk about. So, Son Ye-jin plays Princess Ryoke, who is the protagonist of the film. Her character really represents Korean royal lineage and also becomes this enduring symbol of cultural identity during Japanese occupation. And the film really does follow her from childhood to adulthood through her forced assimilation, her marriage, and the institutionalization she faced. Park Il is a really interesting character. He plays Jang Han, who's the heroic figure and the subtle love interest in the particular film. And though his character is fictional and he's portrayed as Ryoke's childhood guard, who grows into a resistance agent that works towards Korean independence, he really is important for being able to symbolize Koreans' enduring loyalty and nationalism during this time. So while this escape attempt is technically fictionalized for a dramatic narrative, he does play a very potent role for the narrative element itself. Ramiran plays Bokson, which is caretaker role who represents the Korean diaspora living in Japan. And she's really important for maintaining Ryoke's emotional stability and cultural connection at times when Ryoke faces a lot of assimilation pressures. And then Yoon Jae-moon as Han Taek-soo, who is the main antagonist in the story. And he really does represent internal conflict and the moral compromises that occurred during colonization, and he is the ultimate obstacle that Ryoke and Jang Han face in the film. So, moving forward into some information regarding the film itself and the film release. So, the film was released in South Korea in August 2016 and runs for 127 minutes. It was also released in English and Japanese. It performed really well at the box office. It was number one the weekend that it came out and gained $12.4 million in sales in the first 5 days of its release and $39.3 million across the box office. Ultimately, the film was adapted from the 2007 Korean novel Princess Ryoke by Kwon Bi-young. This is a picture of the book cover, and it really does focus on a dramatic retelling of Ryoke's life that really focuses on the emotional weight of her story. So, moving forward into the film itself and what exactly happens in the film. So, the film follows Princess Ryoke as she's taken from Korea to Japan during colonial rule under the pretext of receiving a modern education. And when she's in Japan, we get to see how she faces isolation, manipulation, and ultimately this systematic erasure of her cultural and royal identity. She enters an arranged marriage into a Japanese aristocratic family and ultimately later experiences mental health decline and also is separated from her daughter. So in the film, Jung Han, her childhood guard, attempts to rescue her and bring her home when he finds and learns of her existence. And while the storyline is fictional, it really does represent this longing that Koreans felt during occupation and this need to be able to retain the nationalist spirit during a time of such intense foreign pressure. So although the rescue mission does fail, the emotional core of the film lies in Gyeokhae's quiet resilience and what she comes to symbolize, which is this erased but not forgotten aspect of Korea's past. So, moving forward, it's really important to be able to understand the film to understand the political climate of what's been going on during this time. So, under Emperor Gojong, Korea attempted to modernize through the Gwangmu reforms in response to this growing foreign pressure. So, meanwhile, Japan has been gradually expanding its influence through coercive treaties, such as the Treaty of Ganghwa in 1876, and then also through military conflict, such as the First Sino Japanese War in 1894. And by 1910, Japanese influence had gotten so strong that they were able to formally annex Korea and effectively dissolve the Korean Empire. Emperor Gojong had lost his status entirely, and the monarchy had lost its power. So Princess Ryokei was born into this moment of instability where Korea's sovereignty had already been stripped away. And the film really does focus on how these structural forces define her life's trajectory, and there is accuracy in where the film is drawing this information from. So, moving forward to really discuss Princess Ryoke herself. So, as mentioned, Princess Ryoke was born to Emperor Gojong and one of his concubines on May 25th, 1912, at Changdeok Palace in Seoul. Historically, Gojong actually tried to arrange a marriage for her within Korea to preserve the royal lineage, but the Japanese authorities, once they found out about this, had blocked this attempt. And at age 13, Ryoke was sent to Japan under the guise of furthering her education and was later diagnosed with what was called precocious dementia, which we now recognize more so as a strain of schizophrenia. But there are historians that actually believe that this was a label that was used to control her even further. So she was forced to marry Count Sotekiyuki of the Japanese So clan, and she ends up having a daughter whose later disappearance becomes one of the most tragic parts of Ryoke's life in real life and also in the film. So Ryoke spends years institutionalized before being able to return to Korea in 1962, where she then lived quietly until her death at 76. And while the film really does condense these events for dramatic clarity, the emotional arc that's relevant, so the loneliness that she faces, the cultural erasure that she undergoes, and this yearning that she exhibits is faithful to the historical record as a whole. So, finally, just talking about some general takeaways that are really important to the film. So, while there are some parts of the film that are fictionalized, such as Ryoke's public speech and Jang Han's role, these symbolic elements are really meaningful. So, the contrast in some of these cases, and there are some symbols that are very important, such as like the contrast between the hanbok and the kimono, which is really important for cultural erasure. The use of the arirang, which is really important for underscoring this longing and the sorrow that the displaced Koreans feel. And then also Jang Han's character, while it is invented, it really does symbolize resistance and reminds viewers of this independence effort that continued to exist in Korea. So while the film does emphasize the tragic collapse of the Korean monarchy and the endurance of Korean identity, it really does focus on balancing these two acts. And watching this really did help me understand the emotional and the cultural tension between Korea and Japan during this time. Personally, I don't know and didn't know a lot about Korea's monarchy, so this was a really interesting way for me to be able to learn more about Princess Ryoke and some of the efforts that were made by Emperor Gojong and some of the internal struggles that were going on within the Korean aristocracy and the Japanese aristocracy as well, which helped to really shape my understanding of not just the film, but also my perspective on history as well. So it was a really fun way and a really cool way of learning more about Korean history. But yeah, that's everything from me. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah.